In this video, I'm going to talk about AI writing, creativity, and writing in general. Let's go. As a writer, first of all, I've been someone who has written professionally for the last 10, 15, years pretty much. So I want to start with that. So first of all, just to establish my credentials as a writer, published in daily and weekly newspapers, interned at CBC Toronto at the headquarters, the national headquarters for CBC, worked for a small independent journalistic outlet that turned into a content marketing agency for a couple of years, worked at Post Media in one of their services companies, doing one of the first bloggers content marketing efforts that they ever did. And from there, wrote for my own businesses, wrote for my own entrepreneurial ventures, and used content marketing and used writing as a way to first to broadcast and talk about the businesses that I was creating, and then turning that actually into the service that my current business rests on, which is Evergreen Copy, and doing a professional copywriter for small to medium-sized businesses, and both in the United States, Canada, Mexico, international clients, etc. Okay, so I'm a writer, and I write a lot, and I write every day, and I write by hand. I do journaling exercises. I'm a writer through and through. I'm also a service provider, as I mentioned, so I am not able to ignore the opportunity of time saving, of creative, let's call it assistance, support, research, all these things that artificial intelligence in the form of the LLMs, the large language models like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, etc. So these tools are now available to me both as a writer and as a business owner and as a service provider. So I can't ignore these tools, despite whatever my writing heart might feel about the romance of a typewriter or a writer on their computer, or even a writer by hand. That act of writing is something that I hold very dear to me, and it's something that I practice a lot, and it's something that I'm super passionate about. Okay, but now we have this new tool. And I think at times like this, I really have been thinking a lot about the printing press when it first came out and what that would have meant for the writing community, right? You can imagine that first they're like, did you hear there's this thing? It's going to produce manuscripts in about 30 minutes instead of 30 years. Like, it's going to change everything. What are we going to do? What's us scribes? What are we going to do? How are we going to face this new threat to our income, right? It must have been terrifying for the scribe community, for the writers at that time. They were used to hand copying manuscripts and having 10, 20 years to do that, and all of a sudden, bam, the printing press, printing books and pamphlets and everything that they used to rely upon is now being done nearly instantly. So we had to evolve what we thought of as writing at that time. And writing became not an act of copying so that people could read later. It became a more of a creative opportunity. And we have the birth of books, and we have the birth of novels, and we have all these things that which we now today take for granted as like the way we write. And so I think about writing in AI a lot because I'm using AI quite often in my business to support the work that I'm doing. And I'm seeing how it can duplicate myself, triplicate, 10x myself as that writer by having that support. And the biggest thing I've noticed, the biggest time save is on first drafts. As a writer, and again, I'm talking about it in a commercial sense, because in a purely creative or fictional sense, this type of writing it still requires that deeply human input. And so when we're talking about commercial writing, we're talking about writing for business, writing for education, helping people understand things, giving people basic facts and information. That type of writing is really, really done well by the AI writers. It gives you a first draft with, with minimal inputs and a few tweaks and a few, sharing feedback with the AI. You can generate with great speed, especially if you're using things like a content brief. It can generate with great speed, accurate and powerful products, or at least the first draft of things that you could then share in a professional setting, publish, work for a client, etc. So it leaves me, within kind of in a pull between these two worlds, because on one hand, I'm a writer and I hear the cries and I hear the despair and I hear the fear coming out of the writing community, right? Coming out of this community. And I'm a part of this community, and I want to see writers succeed, and I want to see writers be able to earn a living based on the words that they write. And I want people to have creative and powerful ways to express themselves through the written word. And I also feel that I can't ignore the technology, and I can't try to fight against the tide, right? I can't try and push against what's there, but I can become part of the process of helping define what is the human voice versus the artificial voice, looking at ethics around AI. How do we showcase what is AI assisted versus human? I truly believe that in the near future, human writing is going to be a designation like organic food, where there'll be certain metrics that need to be passed to be able to say this is 100% written by a human. At the same time, I feel like because of the deluge of or tsunami of content that is coming because of AI, so much of it is going to be derivative. So much of it going to be derivative. So much is going to be kind of just the same and totally just replicating on top of. And so human writing and that creative impulse is actually going to be the most important input to any of these AI machines. And this is maybe a hot take, but I feel like human writers are going to actually excel. And as always, the top 10% of writers are going to be fine in any scenario. They're the highest demanded. They're sought after. They can claim a very good revenue and cost per word and all of that. The bottom 10% are always at risk, right? The bottom 10% of people in any profession are always at risk. They're the ones that are just hanging on, and they may still have other backup plans or not that they're kind of working with. So we can't really be sure of the safety of the bottom 10% of any industry. That middle, call it 70, 80%, that's the variable. And that's people who are currently writing professionally, and can they make that transition into this new world? Well, I'm not sure exactly how many can and will. What I am sure is the opportunity is still there for people like us, like writers, to get in on the understanding of how this new technology works and understand what the creative impulse is and what is writing. And I'll just close by saying this idea of what is writing. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about it, step back, and we'll get into more detail in future videos. But just to conclude today's conversation around what writing is and what it isn't. So if you are someone that says writing is the physical act, right? Keystrokes into the keyboard. If you have an old school typewriter, that like clinging, dinging sound, right? Or writing by hand, is that the act of writing? And if that's the act of writing, then I would say that there are people who are incredible writers who are not physically capable of the act of writing in that way, but have voice to text, who are able to create manuscripts, books, blogs, all kinds of things. So that we can't just say the writing is the act of the writing, right? We can't just say that it's the act of writing. Okay, so there's something about the idea and being able to formulate the idea into words, which we would say is the act of writing. Now, when we are looking at building up a case for AI writing, we can still see that the act of writing, literally the creation of the keystrokes, that is being done by a non-human entity. But all of the inputs, all of the do it this way, no, not like that, more like this, no, less like this, more like this, that freedom of editing, which I find is the most powerful part of AI, is that we can actually take a manuscript and learn and say, what would it look like if we tweaked the emotion up just a little bit more? What would it look like if we changed the sound of the voice just like this? And that kind of freedom is really cool in terms of what we're able to create. Much like DJs are able to remix records, remix sounds to create new sounds, I think this ability to do rapid editing around style and voice is something that's going to lead to creativity, right? We're going to have more creativity as a result. However, if we are going to talk about writing as a profession, as something that is going to be distinct from AI, where we are going to construct every single word, I'm not sure that definition of writing will survive. But if we're able to talk about writing where AI becomes part of the research team, where we're talking about transparently labeling human writing versus AI writing, where human writing will still be sought after as a higher value quality input for stuff, and where writers are going to be very much free to do creative things we haven't been able to do before. However, we will be using in some way AI. I think that version of writing is not only going to continue, but to thrive. And I'm curious to know everyone's feedback. I know this is not a non-controversial topic, so I expect vibrant and dynamic debate based on what I'm saying. I'm open to it. I'm trying to figure this stuff out. I think it's important that we all take time to figure this stuff out, the ethics, everything. So I'm open to all points of view. If you think this is insane, that robots are coming and whatever, you've got that really dreadful view, let's hear it. If you're like, this is the future and you're an evangelist for it, I'm open to that too. And everyone in between, right? This needs to be a space where we can get to the bottom of these things and think deeply about these opportunities, challenges, crises, whatever, because we're right in it. We're right in the midst of it now. So I'll close here. Thanks very much for your attention. I'd love to hear more about how you feel about this topic and what future topics you want to hear about. Thank you.